Welcome in. We are past the combine here. It is speculation time for the world of college football and the NFL. Of course, I am Tyler here with Andrew as always. We are going to be going through our joint mock 1.0. So, a little preface, a little reaction to it. No trades. We're not doing any trades, and we're going based off of what we think will happen to this day. Of course, we'll come out with more as we get closer to the draft, but these are the very first assumptions of who we think will be drafted. Andrew, any storylines going into the draft that you want to talk about, or anything that you saw from the combine
Yeah,
before we get
definitely.
into it?
There was a lot of good performances from the combine. I think a lot of the people who are going to have big stock movement aren't necessarily going to be first rounders. Maybe they're late first rounders, but definitely a lot of storylines for us to track. Tennessee, Cleveland and the Giants, all potentially in positions to draft a quarterback. What's going to happen there? Team like the Las Vegas Raiders, a lot of different ways they could go. Quarterback's definitely in need. Will they trade up to get a guy? I've seen a lot of mocks lately having them take a guy like Ashton Genty, kind of bulk up the entirety of the offense. That's going to be interesting. New England, what are they going to do? So I think there's a lot of fun storylines to be tracking, at least for the early part of this draft so far. Now, of course, I know a lot of our answers will be kind of answered during free agency next week, but I'm definitely excited to kind of get our collective minds together and make up our first mock draft.
Yeah, and that's the fun of it, guys, is that we're clashing together, but we're also working together here. So it's going to be a lot of fun. There could be a lot of movement, but as we said, too early for trades. Don't want to bore you with the compensation of what we think is going to happen. It's just too many balls to juggle here. So without further ado, let's get into it. The Tennessee Titans are the first pick in the draft. We agree with this. So Andrew, if you want to go ahead, Cam Ward, quarterback out of Miami, we got him going first. That is for sure in our minds. Andrew, if you want to give a little, you talked a little bit about kind of similar to Bryce Young's situation before, if you want to get into that.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of just my own personal opinions. Going back 2 years ago to the NFL draft, obviously it was between Bryce Young and CJ Stroud for the number one overall pick to the Carolina Panthers. I personally, during my mock drafts, I was very firm in my belief that CJ Stroud was the best quarterback in this class. However, similar to this year, we think that Cam Ward's going to go number one overall, but we slightly just favor Shadur Sanders a little bit more. It's pretty close, but just personal beliefs. We think that Shadur is the best quarterback in this class. However, knowing what all the mocks are and the tendencies with these NFL programs, we think that Cam Ward is still going to be the number one overall pick come April.
Yeah, and what you get in Cam Ward is someone that can make any throw on the field at any angle with very little effort. So someone that has an electric arm could use a little skills in terms of like reading defenses, and we'll see how that goes in the NFL. But as of right now, he's going to be the first pick in the draft, going to Tennessee, who is in dire need of a quarterback in a full-on rebuild there in Nashville. So moving on to the second pick, who we got? Who do you think?
I think this is difficult. Obviously, Cleveland are in a position where they could draft a few positions. We're going to go with the framework of right now. So, a guy like Abdul Carter looks to be the favorite, but that's in the frame of thought that they're going to trade Myles Garrett away. Currently, nothing's moved. So, I think we can kind of comfortably move on and say that they're not going to take Abdul Carter. So, to me, that kind of narrows it down between are they going to go Shadur at number two? Or are they going to go for a guy like Travis Hunter who can play both corner and receiver? Obviously, this website seems to think that in the needs, wide receiver and corner is one of their biggest needs. Obviously, QB being the first, but I'm going to give Travis Hunter being the number two pick. I'll see. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. As Andrew said, to preface it, this is if Myles Garrett doesn't get moved. With Deshaun Watson in the injury situation, as well as the contract, that monstrosity of the contract that they gave him, they're kind of handcuffed. And I kind of feel like they're going to be back towards the top next year. So you might as well load up on the talent. Travis Hunter can't miss. The only thing that it worries us both when we watch this tape is his size. But Weapon X if you're able to use him correctly. And he could be that cornerback one or that wide receiver one. So I think they got to go Hunter here, at least at current circumstances.
I agree. So yeah, the Cleveland Browns are on the clock and they select Travis Hunter, corner slash receiver from Colorado. Now, this obviously an interesting one. You got your Giants attire on, so I'll let you kind of pave the way for this and make the decision. Again, team needs a quarterback, but other issues that could be addressed as well. So I'll start it off with you. Do you think you take a corner for the New York Giants, or a quarterback? I'm sorry. Do you take a quarterback for the New York Giants at the number 3 pick?
So Joe Shane has shown time and time again that he makes the easy decisions really hard. So I have no idea. Now, next week they could sign Aaron Rodgers, get a guy in, but we're looking at it from the framework now. You have one quarterback on the roster. It's Tommy Cutlets. I'm going to say they're going with Shadur. However, if they were to sign a guy like Justin Fields, possibly a Russell Wilson, then I could see Abdul Carter. But for right now, Shadur comes to the big city. He gets the big lights. He was super confident in his press conference at the combine. I want that swag in a quarterback. I was not deterred by that. I was actually hyped up by that. Someone that wants to change the franchise is that's exactly what the Giants need. So I'm going to say Shadur Sanders heads to New York City.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with that because right now we're looking at a off season, a free agency, and even the uh, trade surrounding free agency where there's not that many top level options for teams that need quarterback, and even in the draft as well. It's kind of if you don't get Shadur, Cam Ward, you're probably going to wait till later in the draft to get a guy. So this is a team that desperately needs a quarterback. Obviously, moving on from Daniel Jones and the time with Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito was not up to par. And I think looking at some of their other positions of need, like cornerback, they can wait in this draft. This is a deep corner class. So I think there's a lot of good options that they can wait on. And some of their others, like tight end and offensive line, you can easily plug and play in free agency. So
Yeah.
I'm not as much worried about that. I agree. I think the Giants need to get their franchise guy. So to pair with Malik Neighbors, we're going to get him a potential franchise quarterback. And yes, the New York Giants are selecting Shadur Sanders at the number 3 pick.
Yeah, and Joe Shane said he was going to take a big swing. That would be a huge swing, a lot of boomer bust potential there. But I personally have been miserable. I'm in. I'm fully into whatever they do, so I'll take it there. Now, with the fourth pick, the New England Patriots, this gets interesting. So now that Cleveland has taken Travis Hunter, I think this pick is pretty clear. Um, I think they have to go tackle. Personally, I would say Will Campbell. What are your thoughts, Andrew?
It's interesting because I tend to agree. I think getting Drake May more protection is going to help him. Obviously, I hope that down the line or in free agency they kind of address the lack of receivers and the lack of weapons surrounding that offense. But I am also curious, seeing that Abdul Carter has fallen,
Okay.
do they go best available? Because I think it's between Will Campbell, who obviously proved himself in both the tape and at the combine. He is the best tackle in this class. It's a position that the Patriots need. Do they go for the best tackle, or do they go best available, which has to be Abdul Carter? I think by and far the best player in this draft.
It's a good argument. And you know what? Honestly, I tend to agree with you. If it comes down to this and Abdul is sitting there at 4 and they're not trading out, you got to go best player available. You are staring down the barrel of a prospect that could be Micah Parsons, someone that could be the best edge rusher in the entire league within the next 2 years. So I agree. If you're willing to go there, I am too. I like that Abdul Carter selection.
Yep. So the New England Patriots select Abdul Carter. And I think that would be great for them because, again, like I said, obviously you're going to be upset missing out of a potential generational tackle who could also play guard for you in Will Campbell, depending on what the team needs. But at the same time, it's hard to say that you pass up on Abdul Carter. He has the ability to be a potential all pro player his rookie year. And I think that they buff up the defense. Obviously, Mike Vrabel more of a defensive minded coach anyway. So I think if he falls to New England, they're going to take him.
Yeah, and you're looking at one of the best pass rushes in the entire league in New England next year. And I would argue to say that Drake May could still get offensive line help in this draft, whether that be by trade or just later rounds, as well as during free agency. They have the cap space and they've got the need. So I'm sure they'll be addressing that. All right. With the fifth pick, Jacksonville. I feel like this pick has been the same in every single mock draft I've seen. So I'm just going to say it. Mason Graham comes to my mind. They need D-line help. What do you think? Because now, I mean, their biggest need is tackle. Will Campbell's there. So what do you think? I've seen Mason Graham, but
It's been all leading to Mason Graham, but this is the shift again. Like we said, I think they take Will Campbell,
okay.
especially you have a new head coach in, obviously almost an entire new staff into Jacksonville. there's a lot of turnaround. You want to talk about job security, and the first thing you need to have to be successful in the NFL is quarterback protection. Trevor Lawrence is coming off a gruesome concussion from last season that ended his season. Protection was an issue, not only in the pass game, but the run game as well. Travis Etienne was horrible last season, but a big proponent of that was because he couldn't get blocks to open up the holes. So I think that Mason Graham is phenomenal. And obviously, I think the trenches are the two areas that they need to improve on the most. I think that should come as no surprise to anyone who watches the NFL. But if I'm, a brand new head coach, the first thing I want to do is protect my guy. So to
Yeah.
me, I'm more in the framework to pass up on Mason Graham and go Will Campbell.
Okay, I'm in with that. I agree with that. You're looking at a quarterback in Trevor Lawrence who got that massive contract that no one is talking about. You compare his stats, he's still very similar to Daniel Jones. This is make or break. This is the make or break year. He doesn't have an excuse if he gets a franchise left tackle in the top 5 picks. And then, you never know. This time next year, Jacksonville could be looking for a quarterback. So it'd be good to have that left tackle. So Will Campbell with the 5th pick going to Jacksonville. A little shakeup here. This is where it gets dicey. Andrew, obviously your Raiders here. So many options. What are you thinking?
This is this is difficult. So obviously we're keeping it in the framework of no trades. I think potentially that the Raiders could trade back if both Shadur Sanders and Cam Ward are unavailable at the 6th pick. But assuming that we are going to be looking at this from a no trade and nobody moves, obviously that's unrealistic. There's always draft day trades. But looking at the Raiders, it's very interesting. Obviously, like the website that we're using says, quarterback is the biggest question mark. Gardner Minshew just got released today, but it had been in the plans. Aiden O'Connell's still on the roster. Desmond Ritter's a free agent. So, what are you going to do? Right now, the way our mock draft is going, they're going to wait or bring in a guy in free agency. I think that ultimately is what's going to happen. They're going to try to bring a guy in free agency. If that doesn't happen, they're going to probably sit to the third or the fourth round and then draft one of the quarterbacks that are ultimately going to fall. Um, that being said, this is difficult because there's a lot of different areas they can go for. Mason Graham being available, they love a best available. We've seen that in the past, although obviously Max Crosby getting that massive contract. Do they get in a guy like Mason Graham who's going to pair well with Crosby, Caleb Von Chasen, and Christian Wilkson? So that's a great option. Just again, continue to build out the D line. Pete Carroll, defensive guy, first year head coach. It's going to be interesting. Will Johnson, another name available. Great corner. Obviously, not necessarily their most dire need, but arguably the best corner in this draft. You can never go wrong with taking a player in the secondary. Tedoroa McMillan, get another receiver in. Again, if you have the quarterback issue addressed, have another weapon on that offense. But ultimately, and this is interesting because this has kind of gone against what I've been saying for the Raiders just personally. I think they're going to take Ashton Genty.
Wow.
Great
Wow.
running back class. This is a class you might be able to pass up on him because of how deep the class is. I love guys like Caleb Johnson and Omarion Hampton, but I think right now Ashton Genty he's a stud, obviously. A Heisman contender for a reason. We know he was so close to breaking Barry's record. And I think this is going to be something that might shock people. Obviously, some of the mocks have it, but I think the Raiders will go bold here, get a weapon where you're building out your team so the focus isn't necessarily just on how your quarterback plays. If you have a running back that can rush for 2,000 yards, you can have a semi mediocre pass game. So I think they'll try to get the bulk of their production this season out of Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty because we don't know what the quarterback situation is going to look like. We don't know what the receiver situation is going to look like. It's going to take some of that strain off of Brock Bowers of having a million targets, and I think Ashton Genty would be a perfect fit for Pete Carroll in his first year because the running back room was abysmal post Josh Jacobs.
Yeah. And I will say, Pete Carroll, you think of his best teams that he's had in the NFL, Marshawn Lynch was a focal point on all of them. I love that. That's a butts in seats as well. I'm sure tickets will be sold a lot if they get him there. Wow. I love that pick. I was not expecting you to say that, but really interesting. So moving on to the Jets here. So I got two wild takes. Now hear me out. And if Andrew agrees with me, we'll go with one of them. Two names are sticking out to me right away. Mason Graham, because if you draft Mason Graham, you have the best 1-2 punch inside in the entire league with Quinnen Williams on one side and Mason Graham on the other. But I also feel in my gut that the Jets are going to take a huge swing at quarterback. Similar to the Falcons and the Broncos, I could see Jackson Dart going here. I
I
really think,
I tend to agree. I think he performed well enough in the combine to kind of warrant that. I think he's a first round talent, no doubt. And again, it's going to be that difficult decision of do you go best available with a guy like Mason Graham who clearly is falling. Obviously, it's nothing to do with his ability. He is the best D tackle in this group. Obviously, it's a great deep D tackle class, but I agree. I think the Jets, they're tired of their situation that they're in. They've tried too many options at quarterback. They need a change. And Dart is sitting right there. And will this be a reach? Potentially, but that's not to say that they haven't reached before. I really think Jackson Dart proved himself at the combine. I'm good to take him for the Jets if you are.
yeah, I am. And I really think that Woody Johnson, after getting that F on the report card for ownership, needs to do something. And I think that even his son would agree and say that this is a good pick that really could be boom or bust for them. So Jackson Dart at 7. Moving on to the Panthers, who started off the year horrible. Then Bryce Young kind of bounces back. They're in an interesting spot now where you have, one of the best tackles on the board in Membao. You got Will Johnson on the board. You got Mason Graham. You got McMillan staring at you. You also got a playmaker in Tyler Warren. Where are your thoughts if you're in the Panthers GM office there?
I'm currently between corner and edge because again, corner and receiver, deep classes this year. I think there's a lot of options. They don't necessarily need to rush into something. Now, I think there's a lot of good options in the edge rushing class. Obviously, Michael Williams and Shamar Stewart are the two listed at the highest, but they're also the two that I would say are the most likely to go at 8 to Carolina. So I think those are two very solid options. But I think Will Johnson, you can't go wrong. They need to improve on that secondary. The defense, they were getting ripped apart at times. So I think in my mind that they're going to go defensively. I think I'll leave this up to you between a guy like Shamar Stewart, who obviously stats wise from his season at A&M, not the best, but has had a great offseason in both the Senior Bowl and the Combine. Arguably the best edge in this class. So I'll leave that between what you think, Will Johnson or Shamar Stewart.
Yeah, I agree with you definitely. I think those are the two options they're looking at. I tend to think Will Johnson, just because of how porous their passing defense was. Not saying that a pass rush isn't important, as a pass rush, disguises bad coverage. But when you're looking at a guy like Will Johnson who dominated, no matter who was lined up across him for 3 years, I'm taking him. That's kind of like a you can't miss prospect at DB. So I think Will Johnson's the pick here.
I agree. Get that young staple into your secondary. I think that that's the best pick for them.
So getting into New Orleans now. So this is interesting. Now I'm pretty sure I'm going to look this up for a sec.
Yeah.
Taysom Hill, free agent. I'm pretty sure he's a free agent. Um, let's see. Yes. Okay. He is a free agent. They have, Olave, he's one concussion away from like having to retire. They have an aging Alvin Kamara, who is now a free agent as well. Um, there's not really many options. There's not much upside. So for me, I'm thinking Tyler Warren. I was going to say that. I'm
Ah,
thinking Tyler Warren. What are you thinking?
I was thinking Tetaroa McMillan
Okay.
because I agree offensively, Derek Carr's fading. Their backup quarterback options didn't look great, but the weapons weren't there this year. And obviously, Olave's health concerns. He gets a concussion every season. I think that they really need to look to the future of that offense. Kamara, we don't know how many more years he has either. Get a guy in like Tetaroa McMillan. He's going to be great in the short to middle range, and he's great in catching in traffic. I think that this could be a big comfort zone, a good play, safety blanket kind of receiver for Derek Carr in the last potential year that they have him.
Okay. I'm sold. You sold me on it. I like that. I think either way, they're going with a weapon. They have to.
I
Uh,
agree.
it's been so bland down there. Kellen Moore coming in, offensive schemes. I think he would be drooling if he was able to have Olave, Raheem Shaheed, and then McMillan as well on the outside. So yeah, let's go Tet Mac there at 9. Okay. So the Bears, this drastically changed from yesterday. They traded for Joe Tooney. I believe they traded for another guy. I forgot his name already. But they've loaded up on O-line.
Yep.
I was gonna say for sure Kelvin Banks. I was gonna say, oh, Banks are drafting a tackle. But now I kind of turn to that Shamar Stewart, Mason Graham. Now that Mason Graham slid all the way to 10.
I'm thinking Mason Graham.
Yeah, all right. So I think we both agree. Mason Graham, you put him in there, uh, an anchor for your defense that was already pretty good last year. So the Bears are building something. I would not be surprised if they were much improved. All right, so here at 11, kind of a surprise. Did not expect them to be picking 11th this year. The 49ers injuries obviously got them. They have the looming decision with Brock Purdy. They just traded Debo. What are you thinking if you're in San Fran?
Yeah, this is a weird spot to be in because there's a lot of moving pieces. Obviously, San Francisco still have to pay Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
They lose Debo. Injuries, they've had a lot of departures defensively. It could go either way. I don't know if I've necessarily kind of come to a decision here. I think there's a couple options. Obviously, they could go best available. Guys like Shamar Stewart could be a shout. Michael Williams or Jalen Walker if they wanted to buff up defensively. We don't know if Brandon Ayuk's going to stay either.
Yeah.
So they could kind of shockingly take a receiver here. I don't know. Let's look at some of the best available receivers. Guys like Trey Harris, Matthew Golden, Ibuka, and Luther Burden. I don't know. I think that's a little
It's a
too much
reach.
of a reach.
Yeah, it's a drastic reach, I would
So
say.
I'm tending to go towards the defensive side of the ball. Now they might go with a guy like Kelvin Banks or Membu, but I don't know. What are you feeling?
I'm feeling edge because I will say their defense was bad. Now you get Robert Saleh back at where he started at that DC. I expect that defense to be reinvigorated. You cannot waste the linebacking talent that they have. I was a linebacker in college. I love watching Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. They're amazing, but they need help. I saw a lot last year where they would get reached by O linemen because the D line was not doing their job. They were kind of like in that retool every single year, different D line, kind of getting through it. So I'm thinking Shamar Stewart here. I think he's done enough. I think that Saleh is going to love him and that he's just a beast, especially with the guy like I would have thought James Pierce, but now that I'm hearing all this stuff about him coming out of the combine, no shot. Michael Williams is there, but I think Shamar Stewart is the most impressive of the edge prospects left on the board.
I'll take your word for it, and I tend to agree with you. So yeah, I think that would be a great pickup for them. San Francisco taking Shamar Stewart. I love it.
Okay,
Dallas. Very,
Dallas.
very interesting.
Okay, so this is gonna sound wild. I still think they go running back.
Interesting.
Even though Genti is off the board, I think that Omarion Hampton is good enough, especially with Jerry Jones kind of getting in his dementia state. in there, I could see him doing that. I could see them taking kind of even Tyler Booker. But honestly, I think they trade back. If Genti's not there, I think they trade back. But since we're not doing trades, I could see either Booker there or running back. What do you think?
I was leaning the same way. Obviously, it was Zach Martin
Yeah.
retired in the offseason, so they need to kind of build up that offensive line, especially in the interior again. So, because the remainder of the offensive line that Dallas is bringing back is getting older. They need some youth in that offensive line. I was leaning towards Tyler Booker, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they went with a guy like Amari and Hampton. So I'm kind of in that torn position with you as well, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
Well, you guys in the comments, you can let us know what you guys think. But I think for now, let's go with Booker. Let's
Okay,
go with
I agree.
Booker. I think that's the more surefire pick in that moment. So
Definitely.
Tyler Booker, the Cowboys pick once again a first round O lineman. I feel like every single year they do it, but it's worked out for them as they've had one of the most consistent O line groups in the league. Moving on to Miami. A lot of pieces up in the air. Is Tyreek staying? Is he going? He said he was leaving. Now he's coming back. You got Tua on the brink. I'm thinking after what Armand Membu did at the combine, he has shot up boards. And in our rankings, we didn't even have him in the top five. But after going back, looking at it and seeing the hype that he's gotten, I'm going to go there. I think they pick a tackle. I would have thought edge, but once again, you got Jalen Phillips who tore his Achilles. He's coming back. Their edge rushers have been good enough to get it done. Their defense has been good enough. So I think you invest in a tackle here, whether, he takes Armstead's position at left tackle or ends up at right tackle. Doesn't matter. So I think Membu here.
I agree. Get more protection for Tua and Devon Achane, obviously. Just give them more time. It's a younger offense outside of Tyreek. I agree. I think Membu is the best available. I think they're going to go with him too.
All right, on to Indy. Now, I'm gonna flat out say, like, I think for sure at this point it's Tyler Warren, in my mind for the Colts. What do you think?
I disagree. I personally think that they take a guy like Malachi Starks.
Oh, why do you say?
I will obviously it shows in this that the top three needs are tight end, safety, and corner. Tyler Warren is a generational athlete. I agree, and they've always kind of been lacking in that tight end position. But when I look at a guy like Malachi Starks, he is the pure Swiss Army knife of that secondary for Georgia. And that's the thing is, you get a guy in, he can play. He can play some corner. He can play in the nickel. He can play in the dime, and he can play in safety. And I think just being in this position, I don't think it's a reach. And I think he was really impressive, both in Georgia and in the offseason. I've fallen in love with him. I think it's a perfect no nonsense move for them. Again, tight end, they've shown that they don't really value a tight end that much. And obviously, they've never really had that top of the line talent there. But I think a guy like Malachi Starks could change that defense. So I like that move for me. But obviously, if you want to go for bat for Tyler Warren, I'm happy to hear an opinion.
No, because honestly, I'll say I agree with you because Malachi Starks, you're right, could play safety and corner. And this is a deep enough tight end class where you don't need, like, I don't mean to downgrade Tyler Warren here, but I think the Colts would be fine with taking like Harold Fannin in the second or Colston Loveland or something like that. So I think those guys will still be available at that point where they can do that. So yeah, I like Malachi Starks there. Good pick.
Awesome. All right, moving on next to
Go
the
next.
Atlanta Falcons.
Falcons. Okay. So I could see plenty of things happening here. First thought in my mind is wide receiver. I don't know why. They obviously have Drake London and they have Kyle Pitts, but you can never have too many weapons for a young quarterback. So that's what I thought there. Also, Tyler Warren is still there. What do you think? I feel like you kind of lean defense just because of how bad their defense was, but and Alfred Morris, Raheem Morris, excuse me, is a defensive minded head coach. So you could see it there, but I don't know. I'm thinking weapon or Michael Williams right there.
That's the thing. I struggle because I feel like every single draft over the last few years in my mock drafts, I have the Falcons taking some defensive player. I agree. I think it's difficult because their defense struggled a lot. And I think a guy like Michael Williams would be a perfect fit, but they might make a shock move. Obviously, Michael Penix, he's going to be in his
Yeah.
first full season as a starter next year. They might just want to give him as many weapons as possible. And, Kyle Pitts, he's had an interesting career, but Bijan Robinson is a great running back, and Drake London has been a great receiver for them. So I could potentially see them going shocking and taking a receiver. Now the question though is which receiver will it be?
Okay, so I have an opinion here. I think it would be Matthew Golden, and I'll tell you why. Because I think Bijan Robinson's in there whispering in the GM's ear, like, "Oh, this is my buddy." Plus, he has done phenomenally and everything in the pre-draft process in the combine. He was amazing. Ran all the routes the crispest. Definitely had the best day of a wide receiver. And from the meetings, it's been positive. So I think the Texas to Texas backfield connection kind of helps him here and pushes him through.
I like that. I agree. I think it would have been between Golden and Trey Harris. Obviously, Trey Harris, I value him a lot higher than a lot of people do. So
Ew.
potentially be a reach. But yeah, I'm good. I'm good for the Falcons to take Matthew Golden.
Okay, here we go. All right, Arizona. Interesting, because I kind of feel like it could be anyone. At what point are we just taking best available? That's kind
Yeah.
of what I'm
That's fair.
looking
How
for here.
far is a guy like Kelvin Banks or Tyler Warren going to slide? But to me, I think this is more no nonsense Michael Williams. I
Okay.
just think they I think that they're comfortable with their offense. I think the biggest question mark they have going forward is Kyler Murray good enough? Obviously, they're nowhere near a position to draft a quarterback in the first round this year. I think this is one that they give him another year, and if he doesn't produce, that they go and draft one next year. But I think that that defense struggled a lot at times, and I think getting a dominant edge rusher like Mykel Williams in, I think would just bolster that defense.
You know what this is setting up, right? But I forget that. We'll get to it when we get to it. I think Mykel Williams, I like that. They've had a no-name pass rush, and it's been quite effective. So I think, yeah, that's kind of the move there for Jonathan Gannon to get himself more of a bullpen in terms of the edge rusher. Mykel Williams can be a gigantic difference maker. He was incredibly impressive at Georgia. This brings us to Cincinnati now. It's staring at us.
I'm going best available here.
Yeah, it's staring at us. Imagine Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, who may be on another team, but as of right now is franchise tagged, Jamar Chase. They've been searching for it. Mike Gesicki was there as the tight end last year, did very well. You add Tyler Warren to that mix. Oh my Lord.
Yep.
Yeah, I like Tyler Warren there.
I think best available Tyler Warren if he slides. Bengals would be
Wow.
a fool not to take him.
Wow. That's going to make for an incredible offense. I
Yep.
also think that this one's kind of a no-brainer to me. I'll see what you say. I think Kelvin Banks.
I
I
agree. I
think,
agree. We've had the news today, which could change things up. Obviously, Tyler Lockett getting released and then DK Metcalf being in the trade column. Again, I think that they're going to be in a position where they are either going to free agent or later down the road in this draft a wide receiver. But I don't know. I think offensive line is the appropriate choice at 18, and Kelvin Banks is available. He's a great offensive tackle. I think it's the smart decision. So I agree that the Seahawks will take him.
yeah, they're setting up for next year. It really feels like they're setting up for next year to possibly get rid of Geno Smith and pick a guy at the top of the draft. And getting a guy like Kelvin Banks to possibly be your franchise left tackle is the perfect move. So I like that there. Here are the Bucks. Okay, so I'm going to tell you two guys I think, and then you give your opinion. Right off the bat, I'm thinking Jalen Walker or I'm thinking Nick Emanwori. Just a weapon to kind of put next to Antoine Woodfield Jr. in the secondary for Emanwori. And then Jalen Walker, they've been missing that presence. Obviously they have Shaq Barrett and Levante David, but Devin White was a huge difference maker in their Super Bowl run, and they haven't had that presence inside. So that's really what I'm thinking. What do you think?
I was going Jalen Walker the whole way, so we're in
Yeah.
agreement with that. I think Nick Emmanwori is great idea, but I agree. I think that losing Devin White and never really kind of filling that gap has hurt them. And outside of that, again, they could take a receiver, but I think that they're more comfortably going to take Jalen Walker here.
Yeah, and you still have Godwin and Evans. I know Godwin's coming off the injury, but the offense got them to the playoffs, and that's all that you're hoping for in that division. I think they're set up the best of the teams going into the future. So yeah, Jalen Walker is going to be a beast.
Now, hear me out. This is the team that I think could go bold. Obviously, a lot of the mocks currently have the Denver Broncos taking Colston Loveland. I think they take a running back here. I
You
think
like
Amarian
Hampton?
Hampton, if available, will get selected by the Denver Broncos. The run game has not been great
Yeah.
for the last 5 to 7 years. And I think that's something that's really haunted them. And yes, I think that the receiving room could use some updating. Obviously, Vele had a great year. Cortland Sutton had a great year, but it doesn't really have that star power. But I think that's been great for Bo Nix. Tight end, again, I think that there's a few that down the line, if they weren't able to get Colston Loveland or they decided not to, they could still pick up a guy. They could get Terrence Ferguson for him, for example, get that Oregon to Oregon connection like they had with Troy Franklin. But I think that they see Amari and Hampton available at 20, seen what he's liked. I personally like Caleb Johnson a little bit better, but the consensus seems to be that Amari and Hampton's the second best running back. That's what I'm thinking. I'll leave the floor to you. What are you thinking?
I like that a lot, only because when Javonte Williams has been healthy, he's been able to do damage. Amarion Hampton is a tank. If you go and watch his film, he is never going down on first contact. He got a lot of carries at UNC. They never had the passing offense that you really hoped for to make them a successful team. And because of that, he kind of carried their offense. Obviously Max Johnson goes down super early. The quarterback situation is never it's been compromised the entire season. I love that pick. I think he could do a lot of damage in Denver, especially Bo Nix. play action assassin. That's something that I really love.
I agree. I agree. Now, another interesting team with a lot of moving pieces, a lot of uncertainty. Where do you think right now? Where's your head sitting at when you're looking at pick number 21 with the Pittsburgh Steelers?
So, in the most Steelers way possible, I think they're going Emmanuel here. I think it's best on the board. I don't think James Pierce is the best, and I'm sorry, Derek Harmon, but I don't think you're the best here. I think Nick Emmanuel is the best left on the board. Their O line was good enough, and their weapons were good enough. We don't know who the quarterback is going to be. I assume it's Justin Fields, just based on it, but we don't know. And I don't think they'll add to the offense because of that. And they just seem to be 9-8 every year, no matter what. But to get an absolute weapon in Nick Emmanwori, who can play linebacker, he can play slot corner, honestly, and as well as downfield safety someone that you could put in the box and put it away. Pairing him with Mika Fitzpatrick could be a wrecking crew. So I really like Emmanwori here. What do you think?
I agree. I think it was between Eamon Wari and Jade Barron, but I'm good. I'm comfortable with that as well. I could see that being a best available pick and Nick Eamon Wari going and being a Pittsburgh Steeler.
The steel curtain is the renaissance of the steel curtain because it's coming. Their
Yeah.
defense is going to be disgusting next year.
I agree. Now, hear me out. I think the Chargers right now have two ways that they could go in my mind. I'm thinking they either take Jade Barron or they take Derek Harmon. Both guys, pretty solid careers in college. Obviously, Derek Harmon ending at Oregon and then Jade Barron at Texas. So that's up to me. Edge is a need, obviously. But again, I am not big on James Pierce Jr. I
Yeah.
haven't been. His tape isn't great, and his attitude, which has come out throughout the combine, has been terrible. But obviously, he is a physical specimen. He is a freak athlete, great physical, and he's fast, but his technique's not there. So, do you see them going James Pierce and just saying, we're going to try it? Or do you think that they go a guy like Jade or Derek Harmon?
I do not see them going James Pierce simply because I don't think Jim Harbaugh would put up with it. I like Derek Harmon here. I do like that pick. I think they need to get more solid inside. It would help Khalil Mack and Bosa on Joey Bosa on the edge there. So I like Harmon there. I was not high on Jahdae Barron. I don't like him as much as some of these other guys. So I'll go Derek Harmon. I like that pick.
All right, very nice.
All right. So now we go to the youngest team in the NFL. We're hearing all this stuff, you know, Jair Alexander, he wants out. He's likely getting traded. Their offense is loaded with young talent. To me, this smells of a Jahdae Barron selection. What do you think?
I agree. I think whether or not they move on in any of their secondary positions, I don't think that they go offensively here. Obviously, they have wide receiver listed as a need, although I disagree. I don't think it's a need. I think that they have a
Yeah.
lot of great young talent there. But there's also been a lot of speculation that Green Bay is interested in trading one of them in a wide receiver for wide receiver trade. A guy like DK Metcalf. Like last week, there was some sources saying we could see a Packers receiver traded in a bundle for DK, which I think would answer their questions there. But yeah, I agree. I think Jair Alexander either stays or he goes. Either way, they're going to bring in a young guy. Yeah, I think compared to some of the other corners, I think the next best would probably, in my personal opinion, be Trey Amos from Ole
Yeah.
Miss. I'm not the biggest on Siobhan Ravel or Benjamin Morrison,
Yeah.
so I see them going. Yeah, I see them going with Jade Barron here.
Yeah, and it'll be an interesting cornerback class. It's super deep, but a lot of the guys I think can be mismatched there. We'll go with Barron because that's the consensus next guy, but I agree with you. I think Trey Amos is the next best corner on the board here. So Minnesota, a lot of questions. A lot of questions. Is Darnold coming back? Is JJ McCarthy getting slotted in? But I think it's pretty obvious which side of the ball they got to pick. For me, it's defense. I think it's Jahad Campbell to get someone in the middle. I could also see a DB. They could possibly trade Byron Murphy, something like that. So I don't know, but for me, it's Jahad Campbell. What do you think?
This was a very difficult one when I was thinking about it because this is a team where we really don't know where they stand, and we won't know where they stand until post free agency. A lot of different ways that they can go. I'm between him and I guess just with best available and how the boards are looking, I'd be between Jahad Campbell and Siobhan Ravel. If you think that just being a more defensive minded player, if you think Jahad Campbell's the better bet, I'll roll with you on that.
Yeah, I would say him only because they could lock down and have one of the best linebacking cores in the league next year. There's enough talent in this DB class that you don't need to spend a first round pick on it. So I think Jahad Campbell is a stud.
I agree.
So I
Any
like it.
shouts to any of the D linemen?
Walter Nolan, maybe. Maybe. I like him. Tyleek Williams didn't impress me. Kenneth Grant's a good player too, but I
I'm
mean,
good with Jahad Campbell because
yeah,
I think that Walter Nolan will go later in later than this in the first round.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, all right, Jahad Campbell. Now the Houston Texans, I'm gonna take my name in this. I think that they take a receiver.
Oh wow. I
I
think
don't,
I know
you
which
know,
one you're gonna say too.
Tank Dell right now, it looks like he's going to have to require surgery and he'll miss the 2025 season. Stefon Diggs, we have no idea if he's going to return. It's most likely that he won't be. They need another weapon for CJ Stroud outside of Nico Collins. And I've been hyping up Trey Harris, but I think they take Emeka Ibuka
Yeah.
because he's a great receiver. Obviously, we saw what he was capable to do in his time at Ohio State. He wasn't the best as a gadget guy, but I think that they need a gadget guy, and there's film there because obviously Nico Collins, you're going to have him as that deep vertical threat. So I don't think having two deep vertical threats is necessarily the answer if they get in a guy like Luther Burden or Trey Harris. I definitely think that Emeka Ibuka is definitely the top on my eyes when thinking about players for the Texans to take. Obviously,
Yeah.
offensive line definitely an interesting position that they could improve on, but I don't know if Gray Zabel would kind of out perform the need that they have for a guy like Emeka Ibuka.
Yeah, and I think CJ Shroud is picking this one. I think he's taking the pick, and it would either be O-line or Amiko Ibuka, and I'll take Ibuka there. I agree.
All right.
The Rams. So they had that drama with Stafford. They're in need of a linebacker. They could also use some O-line. I think I'm gonna say my piece here. I think it's Josh Simmons. You
I
talk
agree.
about someone that is a tremendous athlete, but has the injury concern. I think he slots in well with the Rams. I don't think they make a splash pick, but rather go and try to bolster that O line and kind of survive or sign some guys on the defensive side, at least for the first round.
100% agree. My eyes were on Josh Simmons this whole time. I think it's the smart fit and gives more protection to Matt Stafford.
Yep. All right, here's where it gets interesting. I I'm gonna say my guy. In all my personal mock drafts, I have Trey Harris going here. I think that the Ravens really badly need a vertical threat, and that's what they'd be getting. Now, I know what some of the viewers are gonna say. Why not Luther Burden here? He has been injured. Trey Harris. Well, actually, sorry, not injured, but like lack of production, I'll say. It's a combination of injuries and just not getting the ball. He hasn't been open as much as I thought. Whereas Trey Harris, Jackson Dart was thrown to him in triple coverage, double coverage, single coverage. Did not matter. He was throwing him the ball. There is some injury concern. He has been injured before. But of the two, I think the upside is with Trey Harris. What do you
I
think?
agree. I would take Trey Harris here, and I think that's a good pick. Offensive line is definitely one to consider as well, but sitting here, I think
Josh
that they could
Connerly
wait.
is
I
kind of the
think that
next
they
guy
could
up
sit
the
and
line.
they wait because I think Connerly might fall. It's going to be close at the end of the first round into the second, but I think Connerly could be available later, and I think there's some good offensive tackles that'll be available later that they can develop. I agree. I think getting a true vertical threat in would be great because that's been kind of the consensus issue with that Ravens offense is just lack of production out of multiple top receivers outside. Zay Flowers had good production, but they needed another guy who can really kind of carry that load, and I think Trey Harris is that guy.
Yep. All right, the Lions. Now, their defense was ripped to shreds with injuries. If we're looking at the fully healthy defense, and weeks from now we could be talking about Myles Garrett being on this team as well. We've seen interest with them there. I think it's got to be defense. I honestly am leaning Ravel here, but I could definitely see an edge rusher in like Scruton or even James Pierce if Dan Campbell thinks he can get a handle on him, or Walter Nolan, I was going to say as
Yeah.
well. What do you think?
I was between Ravel and Walter Nolan because I think their secondary showed a lot of promise, and it's hard because it feels like when they're healthy, there's not a lot of needs for the Lions. When they stay completely and fully healthy, especially in the secondary too, their secondary is loaded. So I think that that could be a potential. Pierce, again, same. It's a maybe. I was thinking more towards Walter Nolan. I think
Yeah.
getting a pure physical run stuffer could be great for them. Again, this is a team that doesn't have a lot of needs on either side of the ball. So I would go more towards Walter Nolan, but if you felt more towards Siobhan Ravel, I'm happy to go that way too.
Now, I think Nolan's the move only because their interior D line was a revolving door last year because of injuries. To add him on the inside with Aiden Hutchinson on the outside, it'll be a great mix. I think he'll be very, very happy in Detroit.
Exactly. And I think that also takes a lot of pressure off of Aiden Hutchinson coming back from that, obviously, the leg break, which was not
Yeah.
fun to watch. Hopefully he, gets back fully recovered and he stays healthy. So yeah.
This one shouts to me Ravel, simply because they traded Debo. I really don't think James Pierce is a first round pick.
I don't
I'm
either.
So I think Siobhan Ravel here is very eerily similar to Emmanuel Forbes, but they have to improve the defensive backfield. It has to happen.
I agree. I think they've had too many misses lately in the secondary. They need to bring a guy in. I think Siobhan Ravel will be the guy that they end up taking. I love that pick. It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, I'm not the biggest on Ravel, but I think it fits. So I'm sure that Commanders fans are still kind of rolling in their grave the fact that they pass up on Christian Gonzalez 2
Yeah.
years ago. But yeah, I think they go Ravel here. See what they
And
can do next year.
to pair with Mike Sandstrel, who's been very impressive on the other
Exactly.
side. So I
Exactly.
think Ravel would really thrive in that kind of situation. So on to the Bills here. We're getting to the teams that don't really have these last three teams don't have too many needs.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking? What are you thinking here?
I'm thinking edge rusher here. There's been some quiet talks that maybe they go and they try and get Myles Garrett via trade, but I don't think they will. I think contract wise it would be smarter for them to kind of look elsewhere in free agency and in trades. But I'm thinking they either try and splash on James Pierce or they go Nick Gordon. I think those are two great options. I think edge to me, corner
Yeah.
and secondary. I think that they can improve, but again, I think that they can wait. I think at this point, we can comfortably say a guy like Trey Amos will fall. And there's going to be guys like Lathan Ransom and Makuba
Kuba.
that are going to be available later in this draft. So I think that they can wait on here. But I think it's between, honestly, yeah, I agree. I would take James Pierce out. I think it's personally between Mike Green and Nick Gordon. I think
Yeah.
getting a speed rusher in for that D line might actually be the best move now that I'm thinking about it. I think the Bills could easily go Mike Green here.
With an aging Von Miller on the other side, I agree with you 100%. Mike Green, talk about production. You would like to see more out of him. Again, they only played Ohio State. That was their best game. He didn't look great, but 17 sacks speaks for itself. He knows how to get after the quarterback. And I think with the gaining of some weight as well as some technique at the NFL level, he's going to be super impressive and add to that defensive line. All right, so here I think it's Luther Burden. I think
Really?
I think it's Luther Burden. Who are you thinking?
I was gonna go with Zabel, the
Oh,
guard.
really? Okay.
I think again, Kansas City. I think that they've proven that the weapons that Mahomes has doesn't necessarily matter.
Okay. That's fair.
There's been times where that receiver core looked horrible in terms of names, and they've made it to the Super Bowls. Obviously,
Yeah.
Isaiah Pacheco is a great running back. Travis Kelce's coming back, but that offensive line got destroyed
Right.
in the Super Bowl. And I think that's the biggest thing is they're going to look to try to rebuild because you can't give up multiple sacks in a Super Bowl. I think Gray Zabel is going to be available. I think that he would make the most sense in terms of me. And again, I think that they wait maybe second or third round to take a receiver because this is another good receiver class. I think there's going to be options down the road that they like. But I think it's going to be hard passing up on some of these interior offensive linemen when you need it.
You're right. And with this being a deep wide receiver class and just a lot of talent in general on that side of the ball, yeah, I think Zabel is the right pick, especially you just traded Joe Tooney to the Bears. So
Exactly.
you need an answer. And to get a guy that you have control of for the next 5 years, really good pick there. So to end it off, the Super Bowl champion with my grimace Philadelphia Eagles. I said what I said about James Pierce, but I could honestly see them picking James Pierce
I
and
agree.
getting a stud with some character issues like they usually do.
So this pick to me reminds me of 2 years ago, late in the first round when they took Nolan Smith. I think that James Pierce, again, the attitude issues are a concern, but this is a freak athlete that if you get into the right coaching staff, which I somehow think that Nick Sirianni will be able to perfectly kind of channel James Pierce, and I think that this is a perfect fit for them. If they can get him kind of in line with the attitude and the culture of Philly, I think that James Pierce could definitely come in and be a phenomenal edge rusher for them.
It hurts my soul. They already have one of the best D lines in the league, but they're going to add to it because you know what good teams do? If you notice, the teams that consistently win, they keep reloading the D line. The Eagles always do this. They let players go, they just let them go in free agency, then draft another guy, bring another guy in, and they really play up to the standard. I like James Pierce there. Yeah,
All
to end
right.
it out.
There we
Wow.
go. So there you have it. This is our first mock draft of the year in the first round. Definitely some interesting positions. Again, this was a no trade mock draft, but
Yep.
I enjoyed this process. I think it's going to be really interesting. Um, Obviously, we're going to keep looking at it, keep adjusting our mock drafts. We got free agency starting in 5 days. Well, I guess once this gets uploaded, free agency starting in 4 days. So a lot to keep our eyes on. This list is going to change once free agency happens. We'll get to know more about what each team needs getting closer to the draft. But yeah, this has been a fun experience. We hope you all enjoyed. So this has been Andrew and Tyler from Sideline Signal. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, share, subscribe. Follow us on TikTok too at Sideline Signal. But yeah, let's get into a great time frame with free agency and then the lead up to the draft. We're excited for it. We're going to keep uploading as much as we can. So thank you so much for watching and take care.